Welcome to the latest Watercolors Aquarium Gallery podcast, brought to you from the Aquarium Rare Studios in really chilly downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan. My name's Ben.
I'm Amy.
And I'm Charles.
So we did a little experiment last week, and it worked really well, and I think we're going to do it again.
Is the experiment let Charles do all the work and then we just sit here and talk?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Prep work?
I don't like
I
where
don't
this
think
is
so.
going at all.
No, we agreed, Charles. You're the only one doing research now.
Yep. I mean, officially, we kind of, at 15 minutes before the podcast, I'd go, let's write some things down. And I'm just kidding. I usually prep. This time I did not.
No.
That was actually the express goal with this
Yes,
one.
that was the point.
Can we make a podcast that only one person needs to prep for?
Right.
Good thing there's Google if we run into any
Yeah.
snags.
That's right. Things are a little crazy around the gallery lately, so we need to. Yeah, I mean it's good crazy,
Yeah.
but it's crazy.
Yeah.
So-
This is the
It's almost
busy
like
time of year.
It's almost like we're part of a growing company.
What?
Speaking of growing company, is this time for a shameless plug?
I like shameless plugs.
Perfect time for a shameless plug. If you would like to help this company grow, please buy stuff from us.
It's really cool stuff. I'm wearing one of the shirts right now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have merch, products, and plants available on our website. Check that out. But also, if you're local, if you're within, let's say, a couple of hours, we'll call that local. Why haven't you been here yet? Come and see us. We'll hook you up with something.
Heck yeah. The
And I
shop's
am
really cool.
Serious. During one of our recording sessions in January of next year, I will tell you whose designs sold more.
Cool. There we go. I like it.
Because it is a competition, as everything should be. So wait, what are we talking about today?
Well, this is another one that was inspired by the podcast listeners Facebook group.
Thanks, podcast listeners.
Yeah. They started asking questions about corals and like what if we could do a coral primer. And given how well last week went, I very quickly defaulted to, well, we have conversations like this every day. So how can we structure a podcast that basically is just those conversations?
Yeah, I like it.
You guys ready?
I don't
Yeah.
know. I think so.
right.
I mean, I don't feel like last week I was like, there's a little bit of pressure. I feel a little cornered. But, this just feels like, hey, let's have a
Yeah.
conversation.
And I just had a guy come in today who was like, well, I don't know what I want. I don't know what kind of tank I want. I don't know anything about aquariums. The only thing I know is I kind of want to grow corals. So I'm like, I'm in the zone. I'm ready for this.
All right. Perfect.
Okay. Question number 1.
Question number 1.
What is a coral? It looks like a weird plant.
That's always a fun one to get in the shop, and I think there's a pretty easy way to explain the basics of what a coral is. And I mean, obviously you guys are, you know what corals are out there. You wouldn't be listening to a coral podcast, but that question comes up often. Like, hey, look, those things are blooming. What are they? They must be plants. No. For some reason, it's easy for most people to picture a jellyfish as clearly an animal and not a plant, right? So that's where I start with trying to explain to somebody what a coral is. They're really closely related to a jellyfish. If you take that jellyfish with the bell and the tentacles and you flip it upside down and attach it to a rock, that's essentially what a sea anemone is. If you have that sea anemone build its own house, that's a coral. Okay, I just defined stuff with absolutes, and it's science, and it's taxonomy. So there's no absolutes. And so there are corals that don't build their own houses. There are anemones that don't attach to rocks. There are jellyfish that do, all of that stuff. But
But what about?
yeah, so all you guys just be quiet for a while. You can attack that stuff later, but to really simplify it, that analogy holds pretty true. And it kind of, so if somebody asks you that question, it kind of opens a door to understanding instead of trying to explain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, right? The cnidarians and the octocorallias and the hexacorallias and all of that stuff. And we're probably going to be stuck talking about that as well. An average person who thinks there's a beautiful thing happening in an aquarium doesn't care. But if they can start to get a feel for that is an animal, then they might care a little bit more. So how's that?
pretty good.
What do you tell people?
That's typically what I tell people. It depends on the type of person who's asking too. If they're genuinely trying to like change over from planted tanks or something like that, I usually just boil it down to basically a coral is a type of animal that typically grows in one spot and attaches to a rock and uses a symbiotic algae to feed itself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to just boil it down to the absolute simplest possible
Right.
explanation.
And this is the part where, but not all corals are photosynthetic. Yeah, just stop. Just wait. We're trying to simplify things here. Come on.
This is a primer.
Yeah.
We know that.
And the thing that like everybody's got to keep in mind and is really difficult for us in our position in the natural world to comprehend is that like it's basically like asking what is a mammal? What is, so there's a certain set of rules that apply to that, but in general, what is a mammal? You look at it, you're like, if it's furry and has 4 legs, it's probably a mammal.
Right. If it has radial symmetry and stinging cells and a central stomach-like area, yeah.
Yeah. If it grows over a rock,
right.
it's probably a coral. Like,
Yeah.
so
Radial symmetry and the stinging cells are two they got to have those.
that's like the true
to be in the
definitions.
Darien. In that, yeah, and then it gets super complicated. So, how did we do, Charles? Did we pass the first test?
I like it so far.
Cool.
I'm going to point this one more at Amy just because I'm very curious what she's going to say to this one.
I'll be quiet.
Keeping corals seems hard. How do I start?
Give up. It's too hard.
Well, this is what I say for plants too. If you have an established saltwater tank with a light that turns on and off and nothing that eats corals, you can probably grow corals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that was really good.
And in fact, you can grow a gorgeous tank full of beautiful corals. I'll even go that far.
Yeah.
Because green star polyp, button polyps, yellow polyps, mushroom coral, pulsing xenia.
Canyon tree.
I mean, a tank full of just those would look beautiful.
I agree.
And
Yeah.
not very much effort.
No, do some water changes and have a mediocre light that turns on and off. Not even a good one, just a light.
Yeah.
You'd probably be fine.
Yeah.
So what would you guys say is the most common mistakes that newbie coral keepers make? I know that's a big one.
It is a big one. Should I do a top 5?
Why don't you go with the first 2 that popped into your head?
Not using or using straight tap water.
Good one. Good one. I didn't even process that one.
And overfeeding a tank.
Same problems that you're going to run into with
Yeah.
any tank, really.
But yeah, I think a main beginner issue is using tap water.
Yeah, I guess
90% of the time, that's a big problem.
Yeah, I think there's 2 important details there that if you're new to saltwater, you need to know. Basically, all of the commercial saltwater mixes are designed to be mixed in reverse osmosis water.
Yeah.
And like most, I feel comfortable saying most oh my goodness.
Municipalities.
Thank you. Municipality tap waters use phosphate, which is
to help protect us from lead.
Yeah, funny enough.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really cool science behind that. Come to the store if you want that explanation.
Yeah.
But that means that's often fine for a planet aquarium, but that much phosphate in a reef is just algae.
Algae. Yes.
Algae.
Yes. Yeah. If you have well water, you probably have phosphates and nitrates, plus a whole load of other things.
And maybe ammonia.
Possibly ammonia.
Yeah, more common than you'd think.
Yeah.
Agricultural runoff is a real thing, people.
Yeah. Tap water in most municipalities contains phosphates. Yeah. Don't use tap water.
Yeah.
Use reverse osmosis.
My
Reverse
favorite
is deionized.
little tidbit from that video that we did about all-in-one fertilizers for planted tanks is like, and this is the piece of that sticks in my head, is that our water out of the tap has a higher concentration of phosphate than is recommended to dose to grow aquatic plants. And phosphate is one of the core components that you need to grow plants.
Which is also why, fun fact for this is switching to freshwater. This is why we are such big proponents of live plants in aquariums, because the best counter to algae growth is good plant growth.
Mm-hmm. And not all-in-one fertilizers. But we are digressing.
But that
Amy, I
does hold
didn't know
true to
that.
a certain extent with corals too,
True.
where good coral growth can combat a little bit of overfeeding, a little bit of extra phosphates. Good healthy corals use a good amount of nutrients.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my new traded pieces of information that there is a ton of phosphate in our water.
Yes. Because Grand Rapids is an old city, so it has lead pipes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. All right. I'm shifting to the topic of specifically lighting, because you both mentioned they're photosynthetic. Why are coral lights so expensive?
Okay. Lighting science. Blue light has a shorter wavelength.
Which means more intensity.
More intensity. It takes more energy to produce the shorter wavelength, right? If it's shorter wavelength, okay. I only sort of get this part of the physics of lighting, right? But if you could imagine the energy to produce a shorter wavelength and have that go the same distance as opposed to a longer wavelength, you need more waves. Takes more energy to produce it. Right?
I get what you're getting at. I would word it as, just because this is how my brain works, and hopefully some viewers find this useful. That means that per second you're being bombarded with more waves.
Yeah, I think that's how that works.
Yeah.
Right. But what that means is it takes more energy and uses and produces more heat to push out blue light. That also means blue light can penetrate deeper through something, say seawater, right? That would be why when you look at deep water images, they always look really blue, kind of like how aquariums always look really blue. So what we are trying to imitate is tropical sunlight on a coral reef with organisms that are used to really blue light. Tropical sunlight is really, really bright.
There's a different sun down there than we have up here.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I've never been sunburned by a light, right? You know, the 1500 watt VHO, very high output fluorescence they used to put in tanning beds back when, I guess some people still do that. It takes a lot of energy to produce that enough light to actually tan somebody. And it does that's what we're imitating. We're imitating tropical sunlight that can penetrate through water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that needs more power even to generate a dimmer light like the blues, right? Like the blues take more energy even if they're not brighter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
More energy per lumen than red.
There you go.
Yeah.
So from an engineering standpoint, this sounds like a very intense device. How long do they normally last?
Modern LED should get you 10 to 12 years. But if you look at a modern LED, the main component of a modern LED fixture is the heat sink. Is something to absorb and distribute and pull the heat away from that light. Heat is the biggest enemy for a light producing thing, be that an old incandescent bulb, a light on your Christmas tree, fluorescent light, or a light over your aquarium. That heating up is that's going to wear it out faster. The hotter it runs, the shorter its lifespan is. Reduces what's called the lamp mortality curve. Big fancy word right there. Right. So what that basically means is how long are they going to last? Depends on how cool you keep it. And so another perspective on why some of the fancy lights are more expensive, shipping, right? So the LED, if most of it or a good portion of what that LED is a heat sink. In other words, something to absorb the heat. That heat sink is heavy. Shipping that heat sink takes energy, takes a lot. That's why that adds to the cost of a quality LED.
So are you saying that cheaper lights cost less but live shorter lives because they get hotter?
I'm saying that is one of the risks associated with buying a cheaper light. I don't buy cheap LEDs because I want them to last longer, and that's one of the challenges you're going to face is how big and how good is the heatsink in it.
What are the lights that are on the 220 Reef display, and how old are those? Because I know they're at least older than I have been with the company.
Those are Hydra 26 HDs. Yeah, and if you look at those lights, 2/3 of what you're looking at is a heatsink.
Yeah.
The Radiance, mostly heatsink. The Kessel, the reason that's a big can, right? If you ever take a Kessel apart, you'll see that there's this little bitty circuit board, and there's this little diode, and then like 3/4 of that sits above it is all about distributing the heat away from the heatsink or away from the circuit board and the diode.
And those things are heavy
Yeah.
for that little
Yeah.
teeny tiny can.
Dissipating heat. Just go to your local hardware store and pick up some of the higher wattage LED bulbs, and notice that a lot of them have this baffled shape around it, which is just surface area to create the heatsink.
Yeah, what I wish people would understand about aquarium LEDs, and more particularly reef LEDs, is that they're specialty purpose-built electronics.
Yeah.
So there aren't that many people out there keeping reef tanks and keeping them to the degree that they
Right.
need something like a Hydra. So even beyond that, basic supply and demand, like a lot of work and engineering and technology goes into those lights, and there aren't that many people buying them.
The way you said that made me be like, man, now I want to know what percentage of the human population keeps saltwater aquariums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what is that number?
It is
Right.
a niche hobby.
Yeah.
It is. Well, and the amount of people that are going to buy a Hydra 26 HD, now it's a 32 HD, but are going to buy that LED compared to the amount of people that are going to buy an LED light bulb for their house, right? Has quite a bit of engineering actually that goes into that light bulb for your house. But everybody needs one, so they can produce 11 billion of them and produce them cheaper.
Get every person you know to start a reef tank, and light prices might creep down a little bit.
They might, yeah.
We might have a reef version of what we love about Twin Stars, which I think does not exist right now.
I think you're right.
Where it's just a good, simple, basic light that just has what you need and just plug in and go.
Turns on and turns off. Yep.
That is a perfect transition to my next question. So I have this programmable light. How do I know that I have the right spectrum?
Turn up the blues, turn up the whites, turn down the greens, turn down the reds. How's that? Maybe that's a little bit of oversimplification.
If you're getting algae, turn down the warms. If you're still getting algae, turn down everything. Like,
Yeah. So, okay. Those lights are designed to grow coral and grow it really well. And all of them come with some kind of a pre-programmed, if you want high growth, do this. If you want high color, do this. Or customize it however you want. And so go through that programming and see the difference in how it looks and how it makes your corals look. The programming is there and the instructions are there. So it's not, you're not reinventing the wheel at that point. But when in doubt, you want a lot of blue, almost as much blue as you can stand. I like having the UV and the purple up quite a bit too, because I think that does some cool things for color. I turn the reds and the greens down. Unless I've got like a really cool RAS, I might turn the red up a little bit. I don't really see the effect of green light on coral. I don't think it does that much for enhancing anything that I want to look at. But the red
Yeah.
light will make like the red in a fairy rest look better.
Think about what type of environment you want to simulate. If you want to simulate a deep water environment, precisely that.
Yeah.
If you've got red and greens up, you're simulating a very shallow water environment,
Right.
like a tide pool, or one of those weird awkward areas where algae collects.
Yeah. Or a reef crest.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
a reef crest where you better have that tank chock full of coral like a reef crest is.
Yes. Yes. So that is one thing that I like about the aquilumation lights. You think about, the amount of energy that we're putting into this reef tank and how we want to use that energy and use it most efficiently. And for a while, a lot of the LEDs were, here's 100%, here's 0%. That's the range you have with each channel or each color of light. So if you turned down one color, you were not maximizing the efficiency of your light fixture. The way that the hydras do it now is really cool because if you bring down one channel below 100, you can overdrive another channel over 100 and still use that energy from that fixture. I think that's really cool.
That is really cool. Yep. If you've
Yep.
got controllable lights, be prepared that you might have to play around with them in a little bit. And remember that any change you make takes at least 2 or 3 weeks to show up.
Yes.
So adjust a little bit, wait 2 or 3 weeks, start to see the changes, and then adjust some more.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't be changing like 3 or 4 things at once. Otherwise, you'll have no idea what
Yeah.
what it is.
And remember that you're going to have to wait to know what's going to happen. Your algae is not going to start dying off for a month.
Right. Right. Are we going to talk about color temperature? Is that coming up?
No,
No?
no. If you want to talk about it now.
Well, I guess we're talking about LEDs here, right? And so establishing a reef tank and getting the colors out of a coral with LEDs. Think about growing algae at the beginning and growing less algae once it's established, right? So the symbiotic algae that lives in the tissue of coral, the zooxanthellae, if that's doing well, the coral grows faster. The better that's. If you starve that a little bit, the coral's going to look better. So zooxanthellae is brown. That's what color that is. So if you're looking at a tank that's full of a bunch of brown coral, it probably has lots of fertilizer in it that's growing the zooxanthellae really well, or the color of light that grows the zooxanthellae really well. If you're looking at a tank that's got really bright colors in it, the nutrient level is low, and the color of light is not optimum for growing the zooxanthellae, but is optimum for bringing out the colors in the coral. So those adjustments can be made too. So at the beginning, if you want to just get your corals to be big, turn up the whites, keep the blues not at a minimum, but bring the whites up a lot. Those whites are really going to increase the growth on the algae and the zooxanthellae in there. Once you've got those nice and big, bring that white down, adjust that a little bit, and you can make the colors on your coral pop. At the you'll see it right away because the blue will stimulate what's called the green fluorescent pigments, right? Those things that we want to see them glow. But then over time, that zooxanthellae algae will start to shrink back a little bit. And that's what we talk about when corals are coloring up, or you can see more color in the coral. That's really a reduction in the zooxanthellae algae and the pigments of the coral tissue itself showing through.
And you'll see your nitrates and phosphates start to drop along with that. And that's when you have to start feeding the corals because you're starving the algae.
Exactly.
All right. Well, you guys just stumbled into a different question. So, if corals are photosynthetic, why do I need to feed them?
Because it's fun.
Okay, perfect. Moving on to the next question because that's not getting better.
Okay, how about because they
Wait,
have a
wait.
mouth?
There you go.
There you go. Oh, that's
All right.
even better.
Okay, fine. Moving on to question part 2 of it because it's not getting better than that. What do I feed them?
Whatever will fit in the mouth. Like, seriously.
Okay, next question. I mean, she's not wrong. That's like,
How do I know if I need to feed a coral? I know that's a complicated one.
Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna analyze that first like a scientist and say, if it's photosynthetic, you don't need to feed it. It can survive or I should say most corals, can survive without being fed. And again, this is the time where a whole bunch of, what are you talking? You got to feed your corals. You got to feed your corals. Right. I chose my words very carefully. If it's a photosynthetic coral, it does not need food to survive. Photosynthetic, need, and survive were the key takeaways from that. Okay.
Notice he didn't say thrive, didn't say grow. He said survive.
Exactly.
And then is the next statement, need is such a strong word.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. It's one of my favorite phrases. There are many corals that will do much better if you feed them. There are some like mushroom corals. If you never feed a mushroom coral, they'll do fine. They'll multiply. Don't worry about it. Right? But many corals will produce better color and grow faster if they are fed. Again, back to what do you feed them? Go ahead.
I was about to say, so you're saying that if my corals are less reliant on the brown photosynthetic algae living in them, they'll have better color?
Bing, bing, bing.
Interesting.
Yes. And the nutrients they're going to get from the food they're taking in will give the coral growth and expand the pigmentation in the coral itself. Awesome.
Yeah. So maybe we should start. I'll go through some of our coral foods from smallest to largest.
Yeah.
Because we use the Aquavitro fuel or the Seachem phyto or zooplankton additives, which are all basically liquid blends.
Yeah.
Any coral pretty much will take any of those. I think we've even said before, anyone who has a healthy reef, just use fuel. It's just better.
Yeah. It's great.
Just
Oh,
better.
yeah. Yes.
Then there are powdered foods, which we use Reefroids or Coral Frenzy. A little bit bigger, still pretty much everything can take those. For both of those categories, that's going to be mainly what most soft corals will be able to take, right? Until you get to like the bigger polyps, like
But lots of SPS corals will thrive on Reefroids.
Yes.
SBS tank loves
They love
Reefroids.
Reefroids. Yeah.
But the moral of the story there is that's the size their mouth is.
Yes, exactly. SPS corals, you mean like small polyp stony corals? What, small little foods?
Then if you're looking for something a little bit bigger, I like to do baby brine shrimp. I feel like that works well for broadcasting. But if you're not going to do that, then it doesn't work well at all.
Yeah, and I'm a target feeder, not a broadcast feeder.
Some corals can take some pretty big things.
It's fun feeding silversides to big fungias.
Oh, yeah. And like krill to a nice big mouthed acan.
Oh, yeah.
They love
or
it.
Duncan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, look at what size mouth your coral has, and they can probably take the same size food your fish are eating. And if they have mouths that are smaller than that, then they can take smaller foods.
And one little note here, it should be mentioned that we're talking about corals that can eat something the size of a small fish. If you're having some small fish disappear, I need to find. A friend of mine has a great picture somewhere of a green button polyp eating, and it ate it, a clownfish.
Whoa.
It was a small clownfish. It was maybe 3/4 of an inch long, but yes, a green button polyp ate a clownfish.
Never forget that a coral is an animal.
Exactly, and a predator.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Elephant ear corals are notorious for being able to eat some fairly large prey. That's why we don't carry them.
Yeah. I like to say that corals just live like on a different timeline than us. They're just slower.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna I want to follow that thread. So you said corals live in a different timeline than we do. Does that mean they're territorial?
Corals are some of the most aggressive animals that we keep. If
Yes.
not the most. It depends
Yeah.
on the coral. Like we said, there's tons of biodiversity. There are some corals that can't really sting anything else very well. And then there are some corals that everything within 10 inches of them will be murdered over time.
Galaxia.
Yeah.
Galaxias are mean. They don't, and they don't just like Galaxias aren't just territorial. They actually they will prey on other corals.
They're almost Machiavellian.
Yeah. Yeah. And fungias actually are capable of, that's a plate coral, and they're capable of a little bit of locomotion. And if you've got mushroom corals hanging down, touching the substrate, the fungias will actually kind of very slowly maneuver around and digest mushroom corals.
Wow, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Unless you're a mushroom coral, then,
Then you're fine.
Good thing
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, it's amazing to think about, like, that whole ecosystem. Like, think about the huge empty ocean out there, where for most of it, it's just sand and then more sand, or deep water where you can't even see the bottom. And then you get to these little oases of rock where things can live. And it's pretty darn competitive about who gets to live there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
The competition for resources is outstanding.
coral are built in with weapons for the most part, and they will use them, murdering their neighbors and then growing over their fallen bodies.
That
Or
corals
stinging
are
your,
so metal.
or stinging you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to say a coral reef is just a pile of fallen skeletons that the victors are growing on top of.
I
Yeah.
killed my enemy and then I grew over atop his skeleton.
Or don't forget stinging people.
Yeah.
Like frog spawns. I've gotten stung. That really nice soft tissue on the inside of your wrist.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh yeah, they'll get you.
So,
We actually had one of our service customers call and say, "Can frog spawns sting? Because I think I got stung."
Oh no.
you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question just because I feel like it's really relevant now. Will my coral kill me?
Maybe.
Some of them, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Don't lick your fingers, touch your eyes, or pick your nose after playing with your tank.
Yeah, if you have a reef tank, I'd say it's likely that you have a coral in your tank that can kill you. Because who sets up a reef tank without having some sort of pally or zoa in there?
That's true.
Not many.
That's true.
So how do you prevent, like, what do you do after you've been working in your tank?
Don't lick your fingers, touch your eyes, or pick your nose.
Thank you.
Wash your hands.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's
part
it.
1, part 2. There you go. Wash your hands with soap. I want to be very
Yes.
clear on that.
Yes.
Saves lives, saves eyes, saves
It saves lives, saves eyes. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So anybody freaking out about their Paleothola right now, I have no problem at all walking down to the tank, grabbing a pally, picking it up, feeling the slime on my fingers, and putting it in a bag, bagging it up, and sending it home to somebody. No problem.
Just wash your hands when you're done.
Wash your hands when you're done. It's a water-soluble neurotoxin. That means you can wash it off your hands. If you don't, it goes to your brain and messes with stuff.
Yeah.
So, since we're on the topic of safety, I have read articles, I've read news stories about people that wanted to clean, quote unquote, clean their live rock, right? And take the live rock into the shower or under hot water and scrub it with a scrub brush. And that vaporizes all of the toxins that are in that rock. And people have died doing that.
Yes. And this is a scenario where we're not using toxins arbitrarily to mean like random gunk.
Right.
Neurotoxins.
Right. There was a story not too long ago about a family and a dog who all got hospitalized.
That I think was from boiling, right?
Yeah,
I
he
thought-
tried. Yeah, he tried
was
to
it
boil
boiling?
them. Yeah.
Okay.
I remember that one.
There was another one where they tried to scrub it in the shower with hot, steamy water.
Ugh.
Guys, don't do that.
There was one where like they just put it out in the sun and the dog got to it.
Don't clean your live rock.
And it's not
You
just
don't
traded
have to.
stories. We have personal stories from people we know that have ended up not as tragically, but nearly as. So,
Good friend who is blind in one eye.
yeah.
So,
Don't frag them.
yeah,
That's basically
I don't
it.
anymore. There are safe ways to frag pallies, according to people that I've talked to. And I have fragged pallies in the past. I don't frag pallies anymore. We don't do it in the shop.
There's
Yeah.
like 20-something people with confirmed cases of palitoxin. We know one of them. It makes us exceedingly cautious.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he was wearing goggles, right?
Yeah.
Like he was even doing everything he was supposed to do.
Except he left it out.
Yeah.
Right. If you do have to do something with a rock that has a pally on it, just keep it underwater.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's the big takeaway. Don't take it out of the water.
Have we determined if Aptasia X is effective against pallies?
I have used Aptasia X against pallies, and it works as long as you're persistent with it.
So kind of the same as it works for Ectasias.
Yeah, it doesn't work quite as well.
Not as wide.
with
Well,
pellet, but
I was
it
gonna
will
because
work.
if you need to like trim back, that's really the only way to do it safely. I think.
I think, I think that's how I would do it.
Okay. All right. What's next? The
What's
last
next,
question
Charles?
was, can my coral kill me? So
We're
Yeah.
going back to lights. How long should my light be on?
8 to 10 hours a day, not longer.
including ramp up, ramp down.
Yes, good call.
If I have a quote unquote low light, can I leave it on longer
No.
to compensate? I like how you knew where I was going.
Okay, so what Charles is getting at is, can you make up for intensity with duration? No.
Period.
Right. Organisms that photosynthesize from the tropics do that for a certain amount of time, and then they need to rest, just like people.
They get full.
They get full, except for fringe organisms, like algae.
So you said 8 to 10 hours.
Yep.
So like every hour you're on beyond 10 hours, you're only growing algae.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
The
With that,
photosynthetic period, I think, is 8 hours at the most, right? If
Yeah.
you're running 8 hours, then there's probably an hour of wake up or go back to sleep. So 6 hours is plenty for like photosynthesizing time.
yeah.
But I don't think they can do more than like 8.
No, I think that's pretty accurate. And I think it's pretty accurate that if you would keep a coral light on, and this, by the way, is I'm just off the cuff theorizing here, right? If you take a coral light, a good one, and you ramp it up to 100% for 6 hours, and then it's total darkness for the other 18 hours a day, I bet it would be a gorgeous tank with no algae.
I bet.
Good
Yeah.
hypothesis.
So energy goes into a system, and if there's something there to use it, the energy gets used up.
Yes.
As long as the resources that an organism needs to process that energy are there. Okay? Once those organisms are done with that energy, if the energy is still there, something else will use it. That's it. That's all I have to say about that.
How do I know if I have enough light intensity?
Do your corals look pretty?
Are they growing? I mean, really, that's it, right?
Yeah.
That's what it takes.
It can
You're
be a
going
little.
into
Oh, go ahead.
light- yeah. Let me rephrase the question a little bit. So, like, you have, let's say, whatever light, and you're thinking about purchasing a new coral.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that that coral will be okay?
All right, so the scientific explanation would be to spend $450 on a par meter, put it under the light.
Not the par meter that you can rent from your local aquarium store that's designed for plants.
Right.
Yeah.
You need a par meter that's calibrated to depth of water. Yeah, it's a complicated process. Just ask somebody who knows.
Yeah. Like get a light that's growing the coral that you want from for somebody else. Like
I really
Yeah,
like
where do
that
you-
answer. Actually.
Yeah. Where do you go with that one?
I'm purposely
so
throwing curveballs.
I
at
know,
you.
right? It's a good curveball. And sometimes I get people come in the shop and say, particularly like at the beginning of coral growing, like 15 years ago when I just started doing this professionally, and the options for lights were just not there. LEDs were not a thing. And people would come in the store and go, why do I need an expensive light? My tank's that bright. Right? The human eye, listen to this one, okay? The human eye cannot perceive brightness.
No.
usually it's just looking for whiteness.
No,
Like-
no, it's contrast.
Well, I mean like a white light's always going to look more brighter than a blue light to my eyes.
So that's part of it, but really it has way more to do with ambient light. Okay? So in the middle of the night, if somebody turns on a flashlight, it's going to feel bright, blinding. In the middle of the day, if someone turns on a flashlight, you're not going to notice it. If you walk into a school hallway after being outside playing at recess in the sun, in the snow, it's going to look dark in that hallway. An hour later, it's going to look light in that hallway because your eyes have adjusted. You cannot perceive brightness. Your eyes are designed so that you can't. Because if you could tell brightness from different situations, it would hurt.
It's almost like our eyes are not superhuman.
Yes.
You can always do the pirate test and close one eye for a couple minutes and then switch them and see how the difference is.
If you want to know how bright a light is compared to another light, they have to be in the same place so you can look at them at the same time. If you can't look at the same time, you cannot tell.
And even then, right, we lined up the Twin Star 600B with the Twin Star 600C.
I could not
I
tell.
literally couldn't tell a single difference, even though it's objectively just fewer lights.
Right.
It's just not as bright, and my eyes can't see that.
Well, and then we put the par meter under it, and it was like 40,
yeah,
40 points
whatever
different.
The difference.
Yeah.
Significant.
Significant, and we couldn't tell.
Yeah, because those were the same color in the same environment, and our
Right.
eyes were like, meh,
Yeah, it looks
it's
the
close
same.
enough.
It's the same.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have any better answer.
Yeah, you can't tell.
Find
Don't tell me
someone
you
who's
can.
growing the coral you want to grow.
Yeah, or
Don't tell me you can, because as a biologist, I can tell you you're lying. That is
you may as well
literal-
tell me you could breathe underwater
that
too,
is
buddy.
literally impossible.
Which would be really cool, by the way.
It would be.
Signs of not having enough light. Polyps may stretch.
Polyps will stretch. Long-term, the zooxanthellae will die, so corals will look bleached.
Ooh.
Yep.
Yeah, neon colors, like too neon is a bit of a red
Yeah.
flag. Great, rich, bright green is good, but like
Highlighter.
highlighter. Yeah.
Bad.
Like you tell a story about the highlighter anemones.
I saw one for sale again.
Really?
I was like,
oh, you mean dying
a
anemones?
dying anemone. Yeah,
Great. Twice the price.
right. If you've ever bought a highlighter anemone, I'm sorry, you got suckered.
Yeah. Signs of too much light? Algae.
Yeah, algae. There is this thing as light shock. For almost all of the corals that we keep, there's no such thing as too much light. Artificially too much light.
Awesome. You guys just punched out 3 of my questions.
Bam, bam, bam.
Oh my god.
But you can shock if you get them up too bright too fast, right?
Too bright, too fast. Absolutely.
how
Because
does
I've
that
always
shock
wondered
a
about
coral
that.
then?
So that's where you do need to know a little bit about the light in your tank and a little bit about the light where the coral came from. Corals can experience light shock. That is not too much light. It's too much light too soon. Let's go back to our flashlight analogy in the morning. That actually, I never thought about how good that flashlight analogy works, right?
That
if
is a good
somebody
one.
shines a flashlight in your face first thing in the morning when it's dark, it's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt for them, right?
Yeah, exactly. But if it's noon in the snow and somebody points a flashlight at you, you're not going to notice.
Yeah.
Similar effect's going to happen with a coral. So it's never a bad idea to start a coral out a little lower in your tank than you want it to end up eventually, because you know you're adjusting it to the light slowly. Just like in the morning, I like to turn on the little light in the bathroom first while I brush my teeth. And then once my teeth are brushed and I've gotten used to the light, then I turn on the big light. It just makes me feel much nicer.
So if coral are coming from like reef tank to reef tank, light shock shouldn't be too much of a factor.
Most of the time, it's really not
Right?
an issue.
We're all using fairly similar lights most of the time,
Yeah.
whether it's for like a frag tank it came out of or a display tank it goes into. I don't know. Like, it's an issue that I've heard brought up a lot, but I've never actually heard anyone suffer from.
It was a way bigger deal 10 years ago when we were either using fluorescents or halides, right? And so if you were successfully growing frog spawn under your fluorescents, which is very, very possible to do, very easy. Frog spawn can handle even normal output fluorescence. It can handle it. If you would take that and put it under a 400-watt metal halide without acclimating it, light shock, boom, it's done. But if you take that same coral and start it out way at the bottom of the tank with the 400-watt halide over the top of it, and then over the course of a couple of weeks, move it up, the coral will be fine. Adjust it slowly and it will be fine. But it's true that nowadays we're all keeping, I shouldn't say we're all, many of us are keeping good quality LED lights over our reef tanks.
At least people who are producing coral for sale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, would it be the case that wild collected coral that have been in transport for a couple of weeks as they're moving from place to place might have a little bit of a harder time just being thrown right under a metal halide?
Honestly, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, because sunlight is so much better than anything that we produce.
Yeah. It's hard for me to imagine the scenario that something is coming out of dimmer lighting right now. Like,
Yeah.
we've got our frag tank under those Ecotech G5s. At pretty
XR15s.
intense. Or XR15s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're-
Generation 5 XR15s.
Gen 5
yes, that's what I'm
XR15. There we
thinking
go.
of.
You two are nerds.
Wow. Charles just called us nerds. Charles! That's pretty good. I take that as a
Aw,
compliment.
Thanks, Charles.
Sitting there, just watching you guys argue over models of lights. Jeez. Oh, that was beautiful, though.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Amy.
I feel like this is one that we're going to get so many little, like, yeah, but you guys didn't say, or you didn't think
I
of, or
hope so.
whatever.
I hope so.
And I'm like, whoever you are, I'm sure you're right. I don't know. LEDs are a whole thing.
They're so complicated
Yeah.
because it actually was simpler when we had either high output T5s or halides.
Because
Because-
wattage meant something.
It did. A 250 watt metal halide was going to put out the same amount of light regardless of which brand you bought. Sometimes it would be a different color light, and that would have a different effect on your tank, but it was going to be the same amount of light. And high output T5, like a 39 watt, which was a 36 inch high output T5, that was putting out the same amount of light, whether it was from Geissman or Hagen or
Joe Schmo.
Yeah.
Joe Schmo. It was putting out how long it would last and how well it would the color rendering index, right? There's one other fancy term that they would use that basically means how good can it make the color that's going to make and how long can it keep that light intensity. But that was all basically the same.
Now the longevity of your light is determined by how well the person in the factory knows how to use a soldering iron.
Yeah, it is. It is. For a long time, the way that they figured out the color of LEDs is they'd make a bunch of them and put them in a little tester and see what color it was. And that's how you got the color. Because they didn't know exactly how to get the color just right. They just know, you just oh, hey, look, we got one that's 14K, 14,000K. Oh, look, we got one that's 12K. And that's how it was done. So LEDs have just complicated things. And now we talked about heat sinks with LEDs, and we touched on wattage. But an LED running hot or getting too much heat is going to produce less light because that energy is going into producing heat as opposed to producing light.
Whoa.
Right. So that means a 2 watt LED, the individual diode, one to the next could produce different amounts of light. So it's just way more complicated. Some of the what are referred to as the cheap Chinese black boxes out there, some people have success with them and some people don't. And I think that a lot of the reason for that is the inconsistency in those lights. So you might get lucky and get a good one. You might not.
Right.
Not.
Somebody knew how to use the soldering iron better than somebody else.
Exactly.
Is that like a factor in pricing in let's say, quote unquote, and I'm not sure I like using this expression, a good light is because they have better trained personnel?
I'm going to just even not be quite so
Coy?
I'm going to say they use better stuff and can be more consistent,
Got it.
Yeah.
right? Whereas a lot of the really inexpensive imported lights, they're just going to grab whatever they can to put the light together to put the light out as cheaply as possible. And those companies out there with good reputations, that's not what they're doing.
Kessel, we're looking at you.
Yeah.
What a sweet light, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on.
There are a few really good names out there. The ones that I like, Kessel, Radion, Aquillumination for saltwater lights, Twin Star for freshwater. There's some other good ones out there. And I like Lifeguards, and there's some Fluval does some fine lights.
Yeah. But that's definitely the can't go wrong list.
That's the can't go wrong list as far as I'm concerned. The Max Spec Razor, I've had a little bit of experience with, and that's supposed to be really good light. It's not one that I use. It's supposed to be a good light. And then Orphic, I think, has a really good LED as well that I don't have experience with. So
Yeah, we
I'm just
definitely
trying
need to
be
get a little
correct there.
deeper into Reef LEDs for that, like, entry level to slightly past entry level light. I don't know what the go-to is for high quality, not breaking the bank, doesn't need to be controllable, just grows coral. So if anyone knows what that is, I'd love to hear
I think
it.
it's Kessel.
It might
really
be
do.
Kessel, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's still like a 29-gallon tank, or let's say a 40-gallon tank, just so, because you kind of have to have two,
Yeah.
is still $300 or more.
Yeah. There's not a cheap solution. Sorry, you're imitating
Yeah.
tropical sunlight. There's not a solution.
Right,
There's not.
right.
Yeah, lighting in most, if not all, reef tanks is going to be your most expensive single
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Lighting
And
and live rock.
I guess if you're growing like low light corals and softies, then those fluvels are probably the best option.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really happy with how the lighting went. Let's move on to flow.
Flow. Move that water, move that water, move that water.
How important is flow?
Move that water, move that water, move that water.
How should I create flow in my aquarium?
Any way you can. Move that water, move that water, move that water. Okay.
When choosing equipment, how do I know that'll give me enough flow?
You can't have too little.
Extrapolate. 'cause
Choose more, choose more, choose more, choose more.
Choose more.
If you can, as much flow as you can get in your tank and still have sand in the bottom.
Yeah.
But there are, I mean, like if you're going to look at the shelf, like even us here, like what do you look at? Because we have we mainly carry CJ circulation pumps, and we have everything from 1,000 to I think 8,500 right now.
I think so.
And
Something like that.
That's like 6 sizes.
Yeah.
How do you choose?
The bigger one.
It's like if you have a 25-gallon tank, you should put the 8,500 on it.
Yeah. Move that water. No, okay. All right. In all seriousness.
You've got somebody like crying by now because they were standing at the flow pumps the other day.
All right. It's a touchy one to address, but when somebody comes in and talks about how do I know if I have enough flow or if I have too much flow, the first thing I say is, have you ever been to the ocean? And most people at some point in their lives have been to the ocean. Not all, right? And then we live in Michigan, so I can say, okay, fine, in Lake Michigan. Have you ever been anywhere in the ocean where you could stand perfectly still? And a couple of times people caught me and said yes. And then I said, okay, were there any corals growing there? Right? Now, if anybody has snorkeled on a reef or have dove on a reef or have surfed over a reef, because yes, that's a thing, you know that you cannot stand still. You cannot stay in one place if you're looking at coral that's doing well. So let's back that up to a reef tank. How many of you have put a flow pump in your reef tank big enough to move you? No. Move that water, move that water, move that water. So how do you determine what is enough flow? Every portion of the aquarium should move. If you stir something up from the gravel, it should go into the water column and keep moving until the filtration takes it out. Yes, you can put too much flow on some corals. The way you determine how much flow a coral needs is by its shape. If it's got a really tight, compact shape, think of yourself in a really strong wind. You want to make yourself small and compact. If it's got a really big, loose, flowy shape, think of yourself in a gentle breeze where you're running through a meadow. With your arms in the air, you want to feel that breeze. How'd I do? Was that a little too cheesy?
Beautiful.
I love
Thanks,
it.
man.
So, when you said compact and built to be in like a breeze, my brain like immediately goes to bird nest
Yeah.
because that's a labyrinth of let the flow go through it.
Yeah, you can blast those.
Yeah.
Right?
What a cool
A leather coral, it's a polyp extension is a way to, if you don't have polyp extension, you don't have enough flow.
Yeah. Can I say something a little bit aggressive and controversial here?
Please do.
No one needs a sand sifter.
Yeah.
You've got stagnant sand. You've got flow problems. You don't need to throw a goby in there to fix your flow problems. You need more flow.
Right.
You don't need to sacrifice a goby to try and fix your
because it
sand
will
problem.
starve.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, more flow. If there's enough settling on the bottom of your tank that you need something to sift it out, then you're not getting enough flow down by the
Yep.
sand bed.
Yep. Yep.
You know,
Now, if you want crystal white sand and you're obsessed with that, throw some Nassarius snails or a conch in there, but you don't need anything beefier than that.
I agree.
good soapbox.
Good soapbox. I like it. I like it. The flow pumps I like. We talked about Seachays. Seachay does great stuff. Seachay tried a controllable one. Sorry, Seachay, work on it. Make it cheaper or make it bigger. One of the two.
Or make it last longer.
Yeah, that would be good too. But Seachay's, like their static flow pumps where you can't control them.
Extreme.
Yeah, I love those little Seachays. Those are fantastic little pumps. Much better than the now defunct High Doors.
Wah, wah.
Well, they gave me too many shocks. I'm allowed to talk mean about them.
Yeah. They don't exist anymore, so we can say it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. We're speaking ill of the dead.
They're going to
sorry.
come back just to be mad at us.
Right.
There's only so paranoid you can get about somebody saying, "Hey, can you put your hand in this tank?" before you start hating that pump.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
hey, will you touch this real quick? No. Is there a
No.
Corellia in that tank?
I have genuinely had that conversation
Yeah.
with what I think it was Allie.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, put your hand in here. She's like, is that
Is there a
Is there a Corellia in that tank?
so good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny.
And then I have to go back to the big three again, just like I do with LEDs.
Yeah.
Right? The max spec gyre pumps, love them. The Radeon Vortex, amazing.
Yeah.
And the Aqualumination Neros, love them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love the little
and
Nero.
I think like if I was gonna like really settle on one, it would probably be the Neros. I think they're amazing.
Yeah, and I think they're the best example to highlight like the rule of thumb I usually use for people, which is if you're oversizing your flow pump, you might be able to get away with one, but if you're accurately sizing, then you need two.
Yeah, I agree.
So if you're looking at the back of the box and you're like, this is the size for a 40-gallon tank, get two of those. Otherwise, way oversize it if you're just going to go with one, and that might get you the bang for the buck you're looking for.
Yeah.
But like, my tank is a 40-gallon tank, and I have one Nero, and I should have two on it.
That makes sense.
How come these quote-unquote wave makers look like they're like basically a big fan as opposed to like, and I know some of these terms are interchangeable, but I'm going basic boxes, as opposed to like the power heads I'm used to in freshwater.
Impeller versus propeller.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah. And you're not looking at moving a little bit of water a long ways. You're looking at moving a lot of water a short ways.
It blew my mind a little bit. I never processed that was the implication.
Wait,
Yeah.
I think we talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but I think you need to go through the definition of propeller and impeller here because it does totally like blow open the whole thing the way that
Yeah.
Charles was just saying.
Yeah, it's like it's a fan versus a pump. And an impeller is designed to pull water in from one side and push it out the other. Right? And hopefully push it a long ways. Whereas a propeller is it's in a cage and it's designed to move this column of water. It doesn't have to move it 14 feet or 12 feet or 6 feet. Right? It only has to move it halfway or partway across your aquarium. But you want to move as much of that water as you possibly can. And that's what the circulation pumps are designed to do, is just keep the water in the aquarium moving.
And turbulent.
Yeah.
Turbulent.
A wave versus a stream.
Yeah.
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 Cool. You guys are knocking it out of the park today.
Aw.
I got one of, this is meant to be a curveball one, but fun. I move my corals around a lot, and I can't seem to get the flow and the lighting right. What am I doing wrong?
You're moving your corals around a lot.
Oh, okay.
Leave them alone. Corals are sessile invertebrates.
That means they don't move. What's the opposite of sessile?
mobile.
There you go.
And then this is like the question inversed, but I know the answer is the same. But I just want to like really drive this point home. So I've been adjusting my lights and I'm adjusting my flow a lot, and all my corals seem mad. Why is that?
Because they're constantly trying to adapt to changing instead of being able to thrive in whatever environment they're put into. They're very adaptable, but adaptation takes time and it takes energy to adapt or to change to a new environment. If you are changing your light and changing your flow, you are changing the environment in which that coral lives. Quit changing it. Let it adapt.
I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier, which is any change you make in your tank takes at least 2 or 3 weeks to show up.
Yes.
So if you're moving your coral once, waiting 3 or 4 days and being like, it still doesn't look happy. It's still trying to recover from being moved the last time. And it might have still been trying to recover from being moved into your tank in the first place.
That touches on one of the most incredible parts of a coral reef, and that's its stability. The temperature on a coral reef in its natural environment doesn't waver more than 10 degrees and usually not more than 5. Almost ever. Right? We're from Michigan. We have what's our temperature? 130 degree possible temperature variance.
Yeah. It can
in
be
Michigan.
Spring in the morning, summer in the afternoon, and winter at night.
I have experienced 105 degrees in Michigan, and I've experienced minus 10. There's my 120 degrees.
Humans are masochists, by the way.
Yeah.
A coral reef, a stable coral reef in a tropical environment, the Great Barrier Reef, it never drops below 72 degrees, that water temperature there, and probably not below 75, and it never gets above 84.
That's why when we're talking about climate change, raising 1 or 2 degrees doesn't seem that spooky. Very spooky.
Right.
Yeah. An average change of 1 or 2 degrees Celsius is huge
It's
on
huge.
a global scale.
Right. So keeping it back to a reef tank, the temperature stays the same. That's why corals can be so amazing and unique, is because they don't have to adapt to change. The light levels in the tropics. The sun rises at 6, the sun sets at 6. It's the lightest at noon, it's the darkest at midnight. 365 days a year. The light doesn't change. In a freshwater ecosystem, water comes out of the sky. It goes through grasses and leaves and rocks and wood and flows into streams and changes the water chemistry in the stream. So
Some weeks the water might be a foot deep. Some weeks it might be 3 feet deep. Some weeks it might be 6 inches deep.
and some weeks it might be 15 feet deep
Right.
if it's the rainy season, right? So for a cardinal tetra, that water changes all the time. For a clownfish, the pH of that water is 8.4. Period.
Period.
The calcium level is 1440. Period. The salt level.
Wait, what'd you say for calcium?
Oh, I'm sorry, magnesium. 440, 420 to 440. Okay, you get my point.
Yeah,
it stays
it's the same.
Okay.
That's why corals can thrive there. So keep it the same. Don't change it.
You mentioned temperature. What temperature should I keep my reef tank at?
78.
78. What should I use to keep my temperature that way?
Whatever will keep your temperature at 78.
A Fluval M series heater
Yeah.
or anything else at your own risk.
And really, I'm going to say 75 to 78,
Okay.
actually. And err on the side of don't go hotter than 78.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so honestly, I've got a lot of reef tanks out there that we take care of that I don't put a heater on. Some of them I do. Many of them need them, but I wait. And if we're keeping it between 76 and 80 without a heater on it, it's fine. There's so many mechanical things in a reef tank that produce heat, mostly pumps and some from lights, that that it's not always necessary. It definitely was back in the day when we had halides on a tank. But we didn't need heaters at that point.
At that point, you needed chillers. Almost,
We did,
right?
Yes, we need less chillers, but some tanks still need chillers too.
I also want like people to appreciate the engineering that goes into some of these products. You mentioned it heats up the tank.
Yeah,
What's that doing for the equipment too?
that's cooling the equipment.
That's
Yes.
so cool to me. It's a stupid little detail, but I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of stability, how do I control my salinity? I
Don't
am
top off your tank with salt water.
There you go.
Yeah. Salt doesn't evaporate, only water. And actually, I shouldn't say that. Let's just say it this way. Only water evaporates. If your salinity is changing, top it off with fresh water. If your salinity is still changing, you have a leak. I've had this with a couple of service customers before. I think there's a problem with our tank because the water level is going down too far. So you might want to see what the problem is. And I go there and, it turns out that it was extra cold outside, so their heat was running longer, which dried out the air, which made the tank evaporate more. If there's not water on the floor, it's evaporating. That's it. I mean, it either leaks or it evaporates. That's the only two ways water can get out of your tank.
You'd be amazed at how many people wait to have a consistent fill line until after they've already had salinity problems. If you've got a sump, make a mark on it if it doesn't have one. Fill it to the same spot every time. You don't need to remember that. It's difficult to do so.
Yeah, I was about to say, anyone who has been in the store and been in the basement, if you haven't noticed the electrical tape on almost every sump in the basement,
Right.
That's what that is.
That's the fill line. Yeah. Yeah. I don't make a huge deal out of monitoring salinity
yeah.
because it takes care of itself.
Yeah.
If there's no water on the floor, it evaporated. Top it off with RO water and go.
Yeah.
If you take out 5 gallons of salt water, put 5 gallons of salt water back in and go.
The hurdle for some people is top off before you do a water change, not
Right.
after.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that's where salinity creeps up a little bit. Do a water change. If you forgot to top off, salinity jumps up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Next time it jumps up a little bit more before you know it, too high.
Right.
Yeah. I mostly put this question in because I think salinity, as you're jumping from fresh to saltwater, salinity seems scary. And I'm like, no, it's actually one of the easiest things to deal with.
Yeah, it's the intimidating part, though, right? Because
Yeah.
what's the difference between freshwater and saltwater? Well, there's salt in it. And, I mean, really, that's true. Oh,
Yeah.
no, how do I make sure there's enough salt? Well, you just put the right amount in and then don't change how you do things, and you're good, right?
You're good.
I have a service tank that I've been taking care of now. I think I'm on 7 years. And I realized that at about the 4-year mark, I had not checked the salinity in that tank in 4 years.
Oh my gosh.
Right. I think
'Cause
that's,
why would you,
Okay, that's
right?
really not. You should. And
Right.
I should have. And hopefully none of the techs are listening to this. Because you should check that more often. But it's one of those tanks that there's a mark on the sump. And when I get there, I top it off with RO water. And then I clean it. And then I pull out 10 gallons of water. And I put 10 gallons of water back in, and I watch as I'm putting the 10 gallons in to make sure it comes up to the same level, and then I leave.
See, to me, that's just I'm just going to say one thing, actually. The one thing about that just is amazing to me is that a lot of people really underestimate how well you as an individual can tune into one tank as a system and know exactly what it needs.
Yeah, you just get used to it.
You just get used to it.
But I realized we had another tech that was, and we actually learned that this individual wasn't doing things quite right because the tank, like we went and we're like, what's going on with the corals? And we realized that the specific gravity was at 1.032.
Eek.
How is that? How's it even possible, right? And we made some adjustments and figured out what was going on there, and that's no longer an issue. But I I better check that tank because I haven't checked it in a long time. Because one of my pieces of advice to that tech was you need to check the salinity in that tank every visit, clearly. And so I went back and I checked. It was at 1.026. So it's about a point higher, but still within tolerance of where it was 4 years earlier.
That's a beautiful thing.
Just
Consistent maintenance.
Yes, consistent. Yeah. Mark your line for your top off. Top it off to that mark. If you come to your tank and it's not at that mark, figure out why.
That's such a sweet thing about reef tanks.
Yeah.
Like, there's just that stasis there that you don't get with really any other type of tank, even planted tanks. Like, there's always something that's just flying a little bit far ahead of everything else that wants to grow a little bit. But like an established reef tank is one of the most stable aquariums you can maintain.
I don't disagree completely with that.
You know?
I was actually having this is a great example of what Amy's getting at.
Yeah,
I was
a low-tech planted tank might be the one thing that peaks over that for stability.
Yeah, take a look at the tank in my basement.
Exactly.
But I had a great conversation this weekend where someone was asking me questions about how do you deal with the fact that these corals are going to be growing over each other, blah, blah, blah. Like, how do you trim them back? And then, we were standing in front of the 220 downstairs, and I said, this is a 12-year-old coral. It took 12 years to get to this point.
Yeah.
Like, when you're dealing with Amy's comment of corals are just on a different time scale than we are.
Right.
You're dealing with things in terms of years.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Not months or weeks or days, years.
Like that tank that you see online that has like a frag every 6 inches, that could still be a 5-year-old reef tank.
That's true.
That just has that has been established long enough that they've bought enough frags to get there, and it still looks brand new.
So I keep seeing this phrase used in the forums. It says the big 3 of water chemistry. What is that?
I don't know. I don't read forums. The big 3 of water chemistry. I know the big 4.
You're being
But
really
are they talking
vague
about the
on
big
this one.
3? Are they leaving out alkalinity or pH?
pH.
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 Calcium, magnesium, alkalinity.
Because for me, it's ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate.
I have legitimately gotten this question.
Yeah, the big 3.
It's got calcium, magnesium, and
so
alkalinity, I guess.
One could argue that one of the ways for us non-chemists to define alkalinity is the ability of a system to maintain pH. So,
You're like, I don't like it, but sure.
Sure. pH is just so easy to measure, and when it changes, you know something is off. And so maintaining that pH isn't necessarily what your target is. It is the alkalinity, but pH is such a good way to know that something's a little bit
if
off.
If your pH is off, something else is definitely
pay
off.
attention, right? If your pH is perfect, chances are pretty good, so is your alkalinity.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about mineral content in reef tanks, and where does one begin?
Let's start off with, how do I dose them? Let's start there.
Depends on the tank. How do you dose a reef tank is like saying, how do you feed mammals? Are you talking about cows or lions? I mean, okay, so yes, as a scientist, I'm using the word all. All corals that we keep will benefit from stable pH, alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium. But they all don't necessarily need to depend on it. I keep going back to, like, how do you know what to dose? The bone to flesh ratio. And if it has more flesh, it's less dependent on minerals. If it has more bone, it's more dependent on minerals. And Amanopora capricornis is a perfect example. Compare that to a Kenyan tree. And actually, no, we're gonna keep it stony. We're gonna go to frog spawn. An Amani cap, if you touch it, you're probably not going to feel any flesh. So you need to pay attention to your calcium, alkalinity, magnesium closely.
Feels like a rock.
Feels like a rock. A frog spawn is still a stony coral. It is not a soft coral by the hobbyist definition of soft coral versus stony corals, which is simply a hobbyist definition. But it still is dependent. It still needs those minerals. It just doesn't need them as much. So how do you know what to dose? What level are you at as an aquarist, and what level of corals are you wanting to keep? That's why I like AquaVitro products, because they give you 3 levels of dosing instructions. If you're not sure what to do, put in a cap full for 10 gallons or 20 gallons or whatever it says in the instructions, and don't worry about testing, and keep things like frog spawns and leather corals and candy cane corals and even some favias and some of those. And I love those corals. And oh, by the way, we have some service tanks out there that have even some more complex corals, and that's all we do. We don't test those particular tanks because they don't need it. We do test some tanks, but those that don't need it, we don't test it. We just throw some in, and it's good enough, and it's plenty. Something for calcium, something for magnesium, something to maintain alkalinity, which will also maintain pH. All right, so the big 3 is just fine. That works.
I still think even if you're testing for the big 3 with your fancy titration, Red Sea or Hannah checker, do a dip strip every week anyway.
I know. I don't disagree.
Because that'll give you your ballpark pH, it'll give you your ballpark alkalinity, and it'll let you know if your water changes are keeping up.
Yeah.
And I will go to the mat with anyone over dip strips.
I know. Absolutely. Heck yeah. They're great. I
Do
love
it.
them. Love them.
Sorry.
No, I
Yeah.
love the digression. What you saw me doing, I was checking off some future questions.
Yeah.
It's Charles and I had this conversation today because he mentioned that we sell calcium twice as fast as any of the other minerals.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows you drink milk to get good, strong bones. You dose calcium to get good, strong bones. It's not the only thing they need.
Right.
It's just the one that's the most intuitive.
Yeah, it makes sense to us
for
as
sure.
people.
Yeah. I heard a fun analogy of why you dose magnesium as opposed to just dosing calcium. And so we did an experiment to try it a few years ago to see what happened. And okay, so do I do this analogy? Magnesium is like a barfly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And magnesium's easy.
We're going to wade through this analogy, but it's already making me laugh.
Okay, good.
I've heard this one before.
Yeah.
The second you started going,
Yeah.
I was like, that's why I started laughing.
Yeah. And magnesium can keep everything busy so the calcium can do its thing. And they were talking about
It's the ultimate wingman.
it's the ultimate wingman. Exactly. Right. And we're talking about its bonding to I'm pretty sure it's hydroxide ions to form calcium hydroxide, because then it's useful for the corals, right?
Sounds right.
I think that's right.
It's only me.
Right. So carbonate is the target. So if you're bonding if the calcium and the carbonate ions bond, they precipitate, and they are no longer available to the coral. Magnesium can also bond with carbonate, forming magnesium carbonate, but that's not a permanent bond. Those guys are not hooking up for life, but they're hooking up. And if they're hooking up, the calcium can be trucking around looking for the hydroxide ion, which then the coral can take up. Okay. So we did a little experiment. We didn't add any calcium. We used monocaps as our test coral, and it was really scientific. I know that because we didn't use a control. Thank you for laughing at the appropriate time, because you had to. But we just dosed the heck out of magnesium in that system, and we did water changes with instant ocean salt, which does not have a ton of calcium in it. But we dosed magnesium extensively. The growth rings on the monocaps were incredible. The growth was awesome just dosing magnesium. And that's because the magnesium was keeping the carbonate ions busy So the calcium ions that were there, although in short numbers, could do their thing.
This seems complicated. How
Yeah.
do I keep track of all this as a newbie?
Just
As a newbie,
do it.
Just dose.
Just do it.
Look at the beginning. Use Aquavitro as you're starting out. By calcification, ions, 8-4, and fuel. Dose those 4 products according to the beginning instructions, and you will have a beautiful aquarium.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get more complicated with more complicated corals, go for it. But only if those are the corals that are your dream corals.
Yeah. And even if you want to get complicated, the end goal is the sweet spot where you know what you need to dose to keep your concentrations correct, your corals are growing, and your levels are staying stable.
Yes.
That's the
stable.
dream.
That's the dream. It's a good dream.
Doesn't happen that much, but we also test for free, so just bring your water in here too
there we
whenever
go.
you need to.
Yep.
Yeah, we have a customer that's colorblind that comes in because
Yeah.
you like this person cannot do the tests themselves.
Right.
And you know what?
No
I'm
problem.
happy to do your tests
yeah.
Glad
literally
to.
every week.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see you.
Glad to.
So, Aquavitro,
Yeah.
amazing product.
Love it.
Amazing. The other side of the spectrum there is what's the cost-effective version of that?
The dry additives are always more cost effective because with a product like Aquavitro or any liquid additive, you are paying for water. No question. You're also paying for convenience,
Oh yeah.
right? So if you want to do it most cost effectively, the Reef Builder line, I think is what it's called from Seachem.
I think it's Reef Advantage, but Reef
They're
Builder is
powder
part of it.
stuff.
Oh
That's
yeah,
what you want
Reef
is the powder
Advantage
stuff.
calcium. Yeah.
Yeah, the powdered stuff from Seachem, it's great. Pre-mix it, dose it. You are getting just as much effect dosing dry as you are dosing liquid. It's just a little more work on your part,
Yeah, it's what
but
we-
it's cheaper.
it is cheaper. That's what we use for our 1,200-gallon invert system.
Yeah, yeah.
I like Reef Fusion 1 and 2 for the I don't have that many stony corals, but I feel like I should be adding something because that's what I use.
I know somebody who maintained an absolute incredible SPS tank,
Really?
only dosing Refusion 1 or 2.
That seems like you would need a lot of it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Like I'm the once a week I'll dose because I have 1 or 2 stony corals among all of my soft corals, and
No,
that's
it was
enough.
a beta breeder.
That's enough for me. Oh, I see.
Yep, makes perfect sense, doesn't
Where
it?
it's like twice as much work for it to be half as complicated.
And 12:07 p.m. is
Right.
the time that you dose 4.2 milliliters of.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Yep, yep.
Okay, so we mentioned Aquavitro is really awesome.
Yeah.
When I'm dosing Aquavitro, what do I have to do that's different than if I'm dosing something else? I'm specifically referring to their calcification and why it's different.
Are you talking about in terms of precipitation?
Yes.
Yes.
So, dose at different times. Some of them say 24 hours. I don't think 24 hours is necessary.
I think like an hour or two is
I think
sufficient.
so. Yeah. But a lot of them. All right. So precipitation. What that means is 2 things combined and turned into something that nothing can use, and it basically falls out of solution, right? So if you see a powdery thing at the end of the process, that means it precipitated out and it's not good anymore.
So Aquavitro is specially designed to kind of prevent that.
It reduces the likelihood of it. I'm not going
Yeah.
to say prevent it. There is a company out there touting an all-in-one that takes care of
I was
calcium,
hoping you'd get to
magnesium,
that.
and alkalinity. I cannot find, nor have I talked to anyone who has any knowledge of chemistry that can understand how that could be possible. I have not personally tried it or experimented with it, so I'm not going to say it can't work. I'm just going to say I can't find a way that it can work. I think all of those things need to be dosed independently. And I'm just going to say this out loud here right now. Amy just brought her dog in, and I'm very distracted by the cuteness. So probably we'll need to have some YouTube videos featuring Amy and Mac here soon. Don't worry, Splash, you're not getting replaced. But but Mac's a pretty darn cool addition to.
He's just the intern.
Yeah,
The inter-
the intern. And all right. So anyway, alkalinity dosing at the time. No, I don't think it works. Alkalinity, magnesium, calcium.
For me, the part that's hard to fathom with the all-in-one that you're talking about is that
Yeah.
like salt mixes are designed the way they are, so they don't precipitate each other out.
Right.
But it's still not always perfect. The best way I can figure out is how this thing works is that quote unquote it's a hyper concentrated formula. Okay, but like that doesn't answer that. How do you prevent it from precipitating out though?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like-
I'd love to see the science behind it. If you can make it work, that's great.
I want to know.
Yeah.
Does it just absorb quickly enough that the precipitation doesn't matter?
I don't know.
Like, I don't
or
know.
if it's different forms of the different elements that dissolve at different rates.
That would be cool. I
Yeah.
love how we're talking ourselves through this.
I know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I know like the refusions say wait 20 minutes between. I think the Aquavitros say you can do it at the same time, but I don't know exactly how they handle that either.
Yeah.
When I dose it, I don't usually do it at the same time. I dose it in different chambers. So we're using a sump that's got a pump chamber, the protein skimmer chamber, and then the display. And I just dose them in different areas at different times during my service.
The thing that's confusing to me is precipitation is pretty obvious when it's happening, right? Like you can usually see it clouding up the tank.
Yeah. Does everyone remember when I first started working here and I dosed dry alkalinity and calcium within like 20 minutes of each other in the 220?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was like looked like somebody had like
Poured milk in?
Yeah.
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 Huh. We got to do some testing with those all-in-one dosers.
We should.
But
When in doubt, the instructions on the back of most additives are pretty good. Err on the side of less as opposed to more. And err on the side of ramping up slowly as opposed to just being all in. But then go for it.
yeah, and test as much as you can. That helps.
Yeah.
What do I do if I overdose?
Depends on what products you overdosed with. Aquavitra products are designed to make it very difficult to overdose. If you overdosed with Kalkwasser, do a massive water change because you're going to kill everything.
God, that's horrifying.
Right.
And then every step in between those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, it's, yeah.
When in doubt, do a water change
When in doubt,
as
do a water
always.
change. Yes. Yeah. I've overfed. What should I do? Well, start with a water change. I might have underfed. What should I do? Well, start with a water change.
Something is
My
weird.
fish don't look good. What should I do? Well, start with a water change.
Well, I'm out of themed questions, so these ones are going to be completely random and non-related.
Fire away.
How do I acclimate a coral?
Don't.
Perfect. Thank you.
Take it out of the bag, put it in the tank.
Yes.
What is reef dip?
Reef Dip is a product from Seachem that we like, and that is designed to kill many of the parasitic hitchhikers that may show up along with your corals. It's mostly a concentrated iodide solution with various other elements in there. It's particularly effective against worms and arthropods, but can be effective against other things as well. So, yeah, do it. Use it. It's good. Follow the instructions.
Should I quarantine my corals?
Ooh, that's a really big one.
I'm so mean to
I
you
would
today.
never tell anyone no, you shouldn't. It's only whether do you have to. Dips are actually pretty effective for many corals. Depends on how particular. I don't quarantine corals.
Seems like to me the stuff that would get through a dip would get through a quarantine too. Like vermitid snails will survive a dip, but will 2 weeks in a separated tank make a difference? No.
I think you're probably right there.
So, why is quarantining fish different than corals?
Because fish diseases are more pervasive, have different life cycles, and more deadly and harder to treat.
So, fish maladies are
Bad.
bad. Thank you.
I know that's redundant, but
Thank you. You were
a
going.
malady is bad.
You knew
Oh, wait.
exactly where I wanted to go.
Well, if a parasite wants to feed off of a coral, it just has to get to the coral.
Yeah.
Parasites that feed off of fish need to be resilient.
It's true because
Yeah.
they're mobile instead of sessile.
Yeah, and
Good
that's not
words,
to
good
say
words,
that
good
there
words.
aren't corals that can be harmed by parasites more, but it's just tougher. Like,
Is
Yeah.
there like any special?
Special.
Is there any special way
Drink.
to? Is there any special way like to prevent diseases in corals?
All right, so preventing disease. All right, so in a big word, the way you prevent a disease is to not allow it to be introduced, right? You cannot get a cold if you're not exposed to the cold virus. We're going to let that one sink in for a minute.
Allow it.
very loud silence there.
So preventing disease. Don't allow it to be introduced. Keep everything healthy. Healthy organisms, be that people or corals, have a stronger immune system and a higher ability to fight off a disease. Preventing disease in corals. There's so few that we have to deal with at this stage that a lot of the dips prevent it. Corals are colonial organisms. So if you cut off the disease part, you're preventing the disease.
That's a really cool detail, by the way.
Yeah.
How fast do corals grow?
I get that question all the time, and depends on the coral. There are so many factors. So the long answer is yes. I'm starting with the long one as opposed to the short one. Corals are an extremely diverse group of organisms that are dramatically affected by environmental changes. Amount of light, available nutrients, available food, flow, what's around them, how much room do they have, availability of minerals. All of those things can affect the speed at which a coral grows. Some corals by design grow faster because they come from nutrient-rich environments. Some corals by design grow slower because they grow really deep. So how fast does a coral grow? Totally depends on the coral and all of those other factors. But because I just explained, let me sum up. On average, corals should come close to doubling every 6 months. Some corals way slower than that.
But my bubble coral.
Right.
I wish everyone could see the face he just made. Oh my god!
I know. People can be like, no way. Right. If you, some of the SPS corals, if you have optimum growing conditions for an SPS coral, you are trimming your corals every 3 to 4 months.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Yeah, and dosing every other day.
Right. Right.
What are good beginner corals? That's how I'm going to ask that question.
The good beginner corals are the corals you want to take care of.
Ooh, elaborate.
The difference between, all right, so what makes a coral hard or what makes a coral easy is all about how needy it is. How
And how needy the person taking care of it is.
There you go. Ooh.
Wow, we're hitting on
I know, right?
deep psychology Aquarius right here.
Beginner corals. Okay, so beginner corals where you let's break that down a little bit. And so beginner coral is going to be a coral for someone that is probably going to make more mistakes and isn't going to know what to pay attention to as well. Notice I didn't say pay attention to less, but know what to pay attention to, right? You're probably going to have a more basic setup, so you're probably not going to have a dosing system or a calcium reactor. You're probably going to have less expensive lighting, but not necessarily. So the beginner corals, the easy answer is going to be many of the soft corals to many of the softer LPS corals, large polyp stony corals. So Kenyan tree coral, mushroom corals, green star polyp, frog spawn. Those are really easy, really good beginner corals. The challenge that I always have with that term is one of my friends has this absolutely incredible SPS aquarium. It is extremely complicated. Somebody who barely knows what they're doing would kill half the corals in that tank. Maybe 3/4 of the corals of that tank. What they wouldn't kill are the mushroom corals and the frog spawn corals because those are in the tank as well, and they look fantastic in that tank, and they belong there. So beginner corals, right? How much work do you want to put into a tank? How dedicated do you want to be to this? How much attention do you want to pay to this? Not just now, but long term.
So I'm paraphrasing just in the way that I think. So what you're saying is a beginner coral is a coral that is fun for you. This is a hobby and it keeps you in it.
Yeah, I like that.
Got it.
Know thyself.
Know thyself.
If you're going to
Yes.
be frustrated if you don't see growth within a month, pulsing xenia, green star polyp, button polyps, whatever's going to grow quick.
Yes.
If you're going to be frustrated if your corals overgrow each other, start with some hammers, some acans, fleshy LPS that are going to be hardy but aren't going to grow that fast.
Yeah.
Get corals that work for how you want to take care of it.
If you like tinkering in your tank, I could really see a bird nest being the coral that you need to start off with.
That's a great
Sure.
starter SPS coral because
Yeah.
it does have some needs. It just doesn't die right away if you don't fulfill them all.
Are you
right?
going to get anxious if you don't test your tank 3 times a week? Try a bird's nest.
Yeah, give it a shot.
Find a cheap Acropora, try that, but know that it might not work.
Yeah, as a beginner, don't do an Acropora.
Right. But
don't.
there are
You'll
some
be sad.
people who that is what they want, and if they can figure out the needs of it, they should go for it.
Yeah.
How do I not kill a coral? Like, what are the ethics? Let me rephrase this question. What is an ethical way of keeping corals, at least in your mind?
What is an ethical way of keeping corals?
Yes. And I know that's a big...
I mean, I'm not sure what you're asking there, other than if you don't kill them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a colonial organism.
Yeah. I guess I'm
So-
trying to lead... I'm trying to...
You're
create
leading
a
somewhere, and I'm not
transition.
following very well.
Yeah,
Are you
that's-
leading to mariculture?
No, actually, but that's a really good point.
Because that's the most ethical way to keep corals in my mind,
By maricultured corals,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
which means not grown in tanks, not harvested from reefs, but grown in situ where coral reefs exist.
Yes.
You know what? Awesome digression. I did not even consider that. I guess I'm trying to lead into, like, we talk very much about, like, keeping the fish that you're capable of keeping, like,
Yeah.
with your skill level. So how do you know when you're ready for that quote-unquote next level coral? Like, how do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to kill a coral.
Yeah. Buy a small one and all right. So I would never say this about a fish, but as a coral, I would say this: buy a small one and try it.
It's a colonial organism.
It's a colonial organism, and you're fine. Yeah, and you'll probably keep it alive. I mean, corals aren't that hard. They're really simple.
I think troubleshooting a coral is easier than most plants.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
Certainly
test the
easier
water.
than fish.
Yeah.
Test the water and see what's around it, and you pretty much are going to know because it probably doesn't have a disease and it probably doesn't have a parasite. If it does,
Yeah.
well, if it's a coat coral, it has a parasite. But
Poor cold corals.
Mm-hmm. well, no, actually, so that there's actually a little bit of a point there, right? If you have a colt coral and it's not doing well, it has a parasite. Colt coral is really, really easy. It's not very needy.
If you guys want to see the first time I fragged a coral, it's a cult coral, and Ben showed me how to do it literally on camera.
Yeah.
It's on
Yeah.
our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was cut it with scissors and rubber band it to a rock.
Exactly.
But there's a really common nudibranch that comes in on colt coral that looks just like colt coral. And the way to diagnose it, if everything's right in the tank but your colt coral's dying, you probably have the parasite.
From a scientist standpoint, that's really cool. As a hobbyist standpoint, that's really frustrating.
I know, right?
Yeah, you cannot see them while looking at the corals. And even when
And they're
they
big.
Yeah, when they lay their egg cases, it's still in the shape of the coral.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it literally shows up like a little ruffly little thingy that grows that they plant on something. So you can't even see that.
Nature is crazy. I love it.
A little spooky.
If you had to give a brief overview of coral compatibility.
They all want to kill each other. No.
Specifically, let me elaborate a little more. Specifically, like fish and corals. How do I know that my fish won't eat my coral?
Read the book. Yeah, that's way too big of a question because there are angelfish that do and angelfish that don't. There are angelfish that some and angelfish that some not. There are wrasses that some eat coral, some don't. It's reef safe is I think we need to do an entire podcast on what reef safe means. In fact, maybe 2 weeks from now we will do a podcast on what reef safe means because I've seen tangs nip at corals. We had a foxface get brought back because they watched it rip apart a one spot, by the way, foxface rip apart a frog spawn coral. Ripped it apart. So what does reef safe mean?
It's a useless term.
It's not useless. It's a start. It's a starting term.
It's about as useful as the term semi-aggressive when it comes to fish.
Yeah.
Like, reef safe probably doesn't eat most coral.
Right.
Most of the time.
Yeah, and our sharks won't eat coral, but I'd never put them in a reef tank. Our sharks are really cool. I like our sharks.
You use some of the squishy ones.
Yeah.
Aim for mostly herbivores and carnivores. I don't know.
Yeah, read the books.
Zooplankton specialists.
We're gonna do a whole thing on reef safeness.
Yeah,
but that's another hour of conversation.
It's a common question, but I was trying to get that response from you.
Yeah.
Let it be known that we've been testing out the reef safeness of multicolor angels for months, and we're still not confident in saying that they are, even though they haven't touched any corals.
And the reputation would be they're not, right? They're one of those that people say they are not a reef safe angelfish. We cannot get ours to eat coral.
Yeah, we have no idea what that means, but we're not willing to disagree with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a mess. Get the fish that you think probably don't eat coral. If it's a question mark, maybe just avoid it.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me what the hell they mean when they say soft LPS and SPS coral?
Yes. So there's a little bit of science there, and there's a little bit of hobbyist distinction there. So let's first talk about SPS versus LPS. And those are acronyms for small polyp stony coral and large polyp stony coral. The key word there is stony. Both of those corals have a stony skeleton. That means they do depend on minerals at some point. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward with what they mean. How big is the animal itself? How big is the polyp? And the easy example that we're all familiar with is a frog spawn coral versus a bird's nest coral. Look at the little dot. When you look close, that little dot is an anemone-like organism. How big is it? The reason I say it's just a hobbyist distinction is because the turbinators are a classic example. Turbinators have pretty small polyps, but we treat them like an LPS coral, even though they're smaller than some corals that we treat as SPS corals. Chalice corals are one of those we typically treat more like an SPS coral, but the polyps are really kind of big. So it's a hobbyist distinction. It's not a scientific distinction, but we're talking about stony corals and how big the polyps are. I would almost talk about how big the bone to flesh ratio is. And that's really what's going to be relevant there. We talked about that earlier in the podcast. Soft corals are just that. They don't have a stony skeleton. They're part of Octocorallia as opposed to Hexacorallia. And I always get the two mixed up. And I don't remember which is which, but one of them contains most of the soft corals. One of them contains most of the stony corals, with Blue Ridge coral as being the exception, which actually is classified scientifically as a soft coral, but hobbyists need to treat it like an SPS coral. That's just way off the line there because they're very dependent on minerals, but they have the taxonomic structure more like a soft coral, but still a stony coral. So anyway, I digress there a little bit. But really, what we're talking about there is...
The digression is so important there because it's a mess.
It is a mess, isn't it? Right? But
I have to imagine that like every coral taxonomist alive today has a massive anxiety disorder.
Yeah, because the scientists don't even know.
Yeah.
Like, the taxonomic description of corals is actively happening and being reformed as we speak.
Yes. And has been for 25 years or more.
Like, and it was pretty well described to the best of our abilities, and then we had developed genetic technology, and they threw it all away and had to start over.
Yeah.
Corals that look identical are genetically completely different. Corals that look completely different are genetically identical, and it's a disaster.
Well, how'd we do? Did we confuse everybody? Did we make it more confusing? Did we make it less confusing? Did this get us somewhere?
Hopefully we made it easier before we made it harder.
I've got 2 questions left. One that I think will be really easy and one that I think will be really hard.
Okay.
Is it possible for me to have a self-sustaining reef tank where I don't have to dose or do water changes?
No.
Perfect. Moving on.
I have nothing to add to that.
Just no.
If you had to pick one, what is your favorite coral?
Bubble coral.
I like acans.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
All right.
There we go.
There we go.
I think I'm more confused than I was when we started. Hopefully you're not.
Yeah, I definitely am.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated. Are you frustrated with this?
Sometimes.
The fact that other people are, I think, is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it's complicated. Thankfully, taking care of them for the most part is a lot easier than identifying, explaining, and describing them.
Maybe we need to do a podcast where we go, okay, let's throw out every exception we can possibly think of and just make it easy.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how often the conversation I have about corals is more or less. I mean, if you ask me anything about its physiology, I got nothing for you. But if you ask me how I keep it alive, I can answer that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Buy normal corals, get a good light, move the water, do water changes, and dose Aquavitro beginner stuff. All right, there we go. That's how to do saltwater tank.
There.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Bing,
Yeah.
bang, boom.
Yep. What do you think, Amy? How did we do?
I think we did about as
Wait.
well as we could.
How did Charles do?
Ooh.
Let's be judgy. Nah, we can't. Charles did just
Charles
fine.
did great.
What Charles did is he made it so that it was easier for us to do a lot of other stuff. And hopefully this was a lot of fun. And I think we should do this again soon. You know, like
Yeah.
I had fun.
yeah.
I love doing the Q&A thing. I would love to at some point do some sort of live Q&A, and as our our listener numbers go up and the activity of our listeners go up, we can do more and more stuff like this. So please, if you are listening to us or interested in being part of the conversation, join the Watercolors Aquarium Gallery podcast listeners group on Facebook. Send us an email, send us a Facebook message. Just find us wherever you can and let us know what you're doing. Let us know what you want to know about. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about.
Our last 2 podcasts were entirely basically inspired, and or all the questions came from the Watercolors Aquarium Gallery podcast listeners Facebook page, and that is not a joke.
Yeah, it's been a
When
blast.
you said, Amy, when you were listening to us, you should. I thought you were going to say you should go to watercolorsaquarium.com and look at our stuff.
Yes, watercolorsaquariumgallery.com. It's
Yes.
a long one. I believe in you. You can do it.
You can do it. All right. We just did our other shameless plug. Charles, thank you for putting the list of questions together. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks,
this was
Charles.
testing my knowledge. I had to come up with some chemistry
Yeah,
and taxonomy.
yeah.
And
Off the top of your head after a couple of beers. That's pretty good.
I know it's good beer though, so that does kind of help.
Oh, and thank you to whoever provided the beer for us today.
that's right.
What was his name? I don't remember. Jeez. We'll make a
Was
Facebook
it Matthew
post.
something?
Matthew. Oh, yeah, Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew, for
Oh,
providing beer.
I love you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, that was awesome. Well, as you can tell tonight, we have had lots of fun. I hope you guys have lots of fun and keep those hands wet.